How's it going, Maxie? It's great to finally get you on the podcast. I think that this thing has been in the making for like 3 years at this
Years.
point.
I know. I know.
It's great to just finally get you on.
It's nice to be here. I remember being like woefully, egregiously, deeply embarrassed and full of cringe because I can't remember why, but I'd gone into my LinkedIn like filtered messages. Somebody had said I've messaged you on LinkedIn. I was like, I couldn't find it. So I went to this sort of, until that point, unknown to me folder, and I saw all of these people and I was like, and so I started reading them. I was, oh, and then I got tears and I was like, oh God, because yeah, for a long time. And so apologies, but here we are. Look, we made it just.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
weird how that happens. Like I check it like maybe 6 months, maybe if I
Maybe.
remember,
Yeah.
and like it's always just like crazy, like how
Well,
some are getting filtered, and it's like, oh, this is a real thing, and it like completely got filtered away
yes.
from me. Like, what are you
Yes.
doing?
But funnily enough, I do check my junk email probably weekly. I've got that in mind, but not on LinkedIn.
Huh. Yeah, it's two
Mhm.
different, it's like two different communication forums or mediums,
Yes.
like you don't think on LinkedIn, oh, I have a junk folder. You
No.
you know it on email.
Yeah. And I also think of LinkedIn as somewhat social productivity, sure, but actually mainly social, like a professional social media. But email, that is work. So that's probably why my brain separated them. But after the embarrassment a few weeks ago, I've checked it weekly. So
Yeah, personally, I like hate social media, which I guess is interesting, because I have a podcast, so I'm like forced to
yeah.
be on there, but I
Yeah.
just like schedule all of my posts, and I'm just like done with
Yes.
it, like I don't
Don't go
look
look.
at it, I don't
No,
care,
no,
because
I
it's
know.
just too much.
It is too much. It's a huge drain on time, resources. I also try to stay up. I've got some sort of quote unquote fake profiles that I use for meme culture, essentially, to stay up on it, to make sure I've got jokes. But other than that, there's nothing on there for me. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a huge time sink, and I just feel like you're not getting the authentic person. Everyone is
no,
kind of just
the
painting
highlights.
themselves as the best possible,
Yeah,
and it's like I approach it from a different angle, right? Like when I was posting, like, me posting,
yeah,
I mean, it would
the
literally be
worst
like
parts. Yeah,
it would literally be like, I just failed this cert test that
so
I probably should
yeah,
have passed.
yes,
Like, or
yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah,
messed this up, like whatever it is. Because it's like everyone makes it look like, oh yeah, I just took the hardest cert, passed it on the first try, or
yeah, yeah,
did
yeah,
this
yeah,
insane work and
yeah.
was totally fine. It's like, okay, that never happens.
Yeah. Or my kid just said to me the deepest thing I could, basically a philosopher, my 2-year-old, I'm sure they did, Karen, I'm sure they did. But yeah, I remember when Facebook first came out, and I've not been on Facebook for over a decade, not even sort of with a fake profile. But I remember when that first came out, it was slightly more realistic. People hadn't adopted the showmanship yet, at least not to my memory, at least not for my cohort in Scotland at that time. And it was sort of useful because I went to work offshore so early. I could keep up with the things I was missing out on, which has its pros and cons. I was like, oh, I'm missing that, birthday at 18. I was like, oh, I'm missing such a good night out. But I also, yeah, I got to keep up with people, and it was really good for that. I did like social media for that for a long time. And then it was no longer that. It was your annoying sort of long lost aunts getting in touch, and then the showmanship and the sort of what would really be the precursor to the influencer economy sort of started back then. People and their bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird world that we live in now. And like how quickly social media kind of like changed all of that, Like
Yeah.
I think back, and I don't know. I mean, like I just never looked at Facebook, and I just thought of, oh, I'm gonna, be sponsored by some company and
Yeah.
present some
Yeah.
product, or I
No.
mean, like, obviously I don't even do that today, but
Yeah.
for
But it's
people
a
to do
thought.
it just in general,
Yeah.
but now
I
it's like the
know.
main thing that some kids are like
I
aiming
know.
towards. It's like,
They
there's
want it
only
to be a
one
job.
Mr. Beast, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But trying to get, but it used to be when I was 8 or 9, I want to be a pop star. Cannot sing, cannot dance, and I'm ambivariate. I'm not even extroverted. So, but I wanted to be that. It's sort of similar. The problem with the influencer economy in terms of relative to children wanting to be influencers, quote unquote influencers, is the barrier to entry is lower. So it used to be you had to go and audition. Similar things, right? You wanted to be sort of in entertainment. It's almost like when you were younger. I think most of us did that. All of my friends, when we were from 5 to probably, I don't know, 13, 12, 13, we were making up dances in our bedrooms together and pretending we were one of the Spice Girls, which is ridiculous, but it was prevalent. So what we have today is influencer culture, where the kids kind of they want to do that, but the problem is the barrier to entry is so low. So you don't go and audition, you don't have to practice, you just get on the internet, you stay in your room. There's not a lot of skill required. I mean, the more skilled you are, probably the more influential you'll be. Maybe there's some quality that the big influencers have that I probably can't articulate, but it's just changed the way that you have to sort of manage it as a parent. So my mum laughed. I'm sure she was like, "Oh, yeah, of course, you could be the next Celine Dion." But it was, well, you'd have to go to singing lessons and you'd have to go to dance lessons and you'd have to do these things. Whereas now, as a parent, you've got to say either, okay, we'll get you, a setup and you can sit in your room and you can do that. Or no, I can't have you on the internet doing that at 12 years old. Those are really the two choices you have as a parent, I think. So it's changed a lot, but actually for children it hasn't changed. They want to be, I don't know, known
Yeah.
entities. Yeah. And that's been true for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting that you bring it up and you kind of mention it like that. I guess I never even thought about it like that,
Yeah.
where um, you know, I don't want to say back then, but like, 15 years ago,
No,
right?
back then. Yeah.
15 years ago, like, it was like, yeah, you have to go and do these lessons and you have to
Yeah.
go and try out for stuff,
Yeah, you want to be a soccer star?
98%.
Get out there with
Yeah,
a ball,
right.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, if I want to get the scholarship to some college, I'm going to go and post my videos on YouTube, send them to
Yeah.
all the coaches,
Yeah.
show skills training and all that sort of stuff. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure that's happening. That's
I'm
a
sure it
totally
is.
different, man, that's a totally different way of approaching it.
Approaching
Like,
it.
when I was in high school, I had to like convince coaches to come out and see me if I wanted to do something like that.
Yes. Yeah. No, it has changed. And in some ways it's great. We can't fight the future every step of the way, but as an adult, obviously you can't help but see how it's changed and perceive it sometimes to be for the worst rather
Yeah,
than the best. Whereas kids are like, this is amazing. But children are idiots. So if they're not sentient beings, we shouldn't always listen to them.
right.
And that's why I don't have children.
Yeah. So, Maxie, we kind of just dove right in,
Gotten.
right?
Yeah.
But you're doing some really interesting stuff with Subsea
Yeah.
data centers.
Yeah.
How did you get started in this world? I'm just going to generalize it, of IT
Mhm.
overall, right? How
Yeah.
did you get started? What kind of piqued your interest to say, maybe this is something for me,
Yeah.
right? And just walk me through that journey.
It was a wild ride sort of looking back, and it's interesting because as a step parent, I would hate for my, you know, children to take this path, but of course you don't think of it from a parental point of view, you only think of it from your own growing up. But I left school when I was sort of 15, which I'm sure my mother was thrilled about, but I also left home, which again, I'm sure she was thrilled about, but I thought I was an adult. And so I was looking for, I'd, had all these like small crappy jobs. Essentially, I was a cleaner and I worked in bars, even though I was underage. I sold shoes. There was some petty crime. It was wild for a few years, and then I got to about 17, 18, I was working in a call center at that time, I think, but I was just about to get fired because one of the managers had listened into all calls, leaving the call center. It was a Tesco call center, so sort of like a Walmart call center. Some calls get flagged, but they're all recorded, and it was just me on the phone with my friend for 4 hours. I just phoned them for, half of my shift because what did I know and what did I care? And I remember she was sort of laughing. She was smirking. I was like, I know what's happening. She must have just been thinking that the gall sort of thing. And I had gone to this age where I still didn't know what I was doing, obviously, evidently, but I was more interested in or I had more sort of, what is the rest of my life going to be like? Is this it, sort of thing? I was coming to that, and I wanted to travel. I wanted to leave where I was in Scotland. So I started to think about the jobs, but I hadn't finished school. So most of the jobs that were open to me would have been like going to a foreign country and teaching English, but I didn't have an English credit because I didn't finish school. So probably should have gone to university and studied something like that, but I'm actually glad that I didn't. I ended up working offshore oil and gas, sort of by chance. I knew about the industry because my granddad had worked offshore and my dad was then working offshore. So I fell into that and I stayed offshore for about 10 years building robots. I got sort of most of my training on the job on the oil rigs. I was given, a really good opportunity by somebody I'm still close to. We basically inspected pipelines, laid pipelines, and other offshore infrastructure. And yeah, so for about 10 years. And then I moved to Los Angeles after sort of 7 other countries, trying a few other countries and traveling a lot. And I ended up, well, first of all, I ended up in Miami. I was like, oh, I do not like this because I didn't party and don't take drugs. I drank probably too much, but not, to go out and get drunk, just a dabble in whiskey. And so I ended up moving to Los Angeles, and then I got into stunt work for a little while, which was enjoyable in its own right, but it was never going to be a career. And then I was still working offshore on and off, and over the sort of 10 years I'd worked offshore, I'd gotten some long distance degrees. Some I finished, some I did not. And one of them was computer science. And so I ended up with a job down in Australia, which was again sort of haphazard, but took the opportunity, went down to Australia, worked for one of the big 4 down there, and was taught pen testing and red teaming. Social engineering was my first sort of introduction to social engineering as a profession, not just a natural skill. I started out by saying I was a little bit of a social nuisance. There were some petty crime between 15 and 18. And a lot of that involved social engineering. We just didn't know that's what it was. We just thought we were sort of bullshitting our way into places or out of places where we were in trouble, so on and so forth. And here I was like, there's a career in this. This is amazing. So I ended up doing that for a few years. And then my last job, I was contracted, independent. And my last job was for a data center, in-house data center team. They were responsible for the security of data centers for a company that you and I definitely know about and everybody else knows about too. And we got into one of their data centers, which I think was hosting very sensitive material. And we got through the sewers of all places because it was very well guarded. I didn't think we were going to get in. That was, again, there was a lot of luck involved in that, not just skill. And the more skill you have, the more important luck is. So we got in through the sewers, and I remember it being a really big deal. Everybody that we were with was like, white-faced and just like, this is really bad. And me and a couple of other people who had been contracted were like, this is amazing. And then I remember thinking, because of working offshore for so long and then doing red teaming for so long, I was like, well, if you want to keep them safe, put them underwater. And it was no more sort of brilliant than that. It was really just this simple, if you want to keep them safe, this is what to do. So then I knew that I was leaving the social engineer red teaming space. So I phoned my old boss and said, hey, what do you think about this? He was still doing lots of things offshore, was renting out vessels with crew and ROVs. And I was like, what do you think of this? And he was like, I've had similar thoughts. I like it. I think, yeah, if you want to do it, you should do it. And then I was like, do you want to do it with me? And so he does. And it's sort of been an enjoyable ride up until now, but it's been 4 long years of trying to chasing the wrong things, chasing some of the right things. You don't actually know what you're doing until it does or doesn't work out. That's
Hmm.
startup culture. It's problem solving from start to finish. And you never know if you're solving the problem correctly. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
That was a lot for you. Good luck breaking that down. Go on, though.
No, it's an interesting path. I never looked at, the crime world as being mostly like social engineering, right? But as soon as I started to get into like security, because
Yeah.
I got my degree in criminal justice. So I'm very well
Oh,
acquainted with, like serial killers and all that sort of stuff, right? Like a lot of the documentaries that come out
yeah.
or like TV shows
Yeah.
about them, I don't even watch because like I sat through that class and I'm like,
Yeah.
I do not
I don't
want to revisit that again.
no. No.
And so, but like I never looked at it from social engineering. I just looked at it
Yeah.
as someone, kind of being not calling you this, right? But like when you're a serial killer, you're typically a sociopath and
Yep.
you're manipulating people,
Yep.
to do things that they may or may not normally do, to for you to gain an advantage over them,
Yeah.
right? And once I got into cybersecurity, I was able to say like, oh, that is like social engineering, like to the
Mhm.
absolute max, though, with the
Yes.
worst intentions possible.
Yes.
What are some basics of social engineering that people may use in their day-to-day lives that they don't even realize? Because like you mentioned, you were already good at it and you didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Well, what are some of those skills?
Well, I mean, I think social engineering, there's been this industry carved out of what is essentially human nature. It's like social engineering isn't an industry that was thought up, right? It's actually carved out of things that we all do every day. It's interaction. Instead of interacting with someone in this sort of haphazard, responsive, or reactive way, you're doing it with intention. And so, even a serial killer, they are manipulating people to do things sometimes that they would already do. Who was the guy? As soon as you get his name, you're going to be like, you didn't know his name, you're an idiot. But who was the guy? I'm sure he was gay and he was taking men home and murdering them. He was kind of hot.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Was it Ted Bundy or was it not Ted Bundy? I don't. Should one of us look this
It
up?
wasn't Ted
Was it?
Bundy. They made a show about him like
They
two
did
years
make a.
ago.
Yes. I'm going to Google
Yeah,
gay
now we gotta look.
serial killer and all your audience just shouting, you idiots.
Yeah, right.
Uh, I don't know who Richard Rogers is, but he's come up. But again, I did just type in gay serial killers, which is great on my search history. Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, yeah.
Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay, Jeffrey Dahmer. So it's likely that the people that he had sort of gone home with him, not well versed on him, I think I've got the basics. They would have been doing that anyway. So he wasn't trying to get them to do something they wouldn't do. He was simply maneuvering so that they would do it with him. And so most people will hold the door open for you. Like you'll hear this in social engineering all the time. You've got women going in with fake pregnant bumps or people going in holding like the cartons with like 8 coffees. And you're like, could you just hold the door? People will hold the door for you. You're just saying, do it for me because of this. And so it's social engineering isn't difficult until you sort of get in your head about it. But of course, I had a lot more practice than other people because I had to get out of some sticky situations from, at 14, 15, 16 years old. So you sort of, I would say, get the gift of the gab in a way, if that's I don't know if that's a British saying or a Scottish saying or a worldwide one, but you sort of become confident in your ability to talk yourself in or out of something. And if it works, great, you get a high from it. And if it doesn't work, then the police are probably getting called. But yeah, I think social engineering it's human instinct. It's just now you're doing it with some level of intention. The other person's unaware of that. So it's asymmetric and it's sort of unfair in a way, but such is life.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, several years ago, I used to work for a credit bureau,
Yeah.
and if I said their name, everyone
Would
would know their name. And we had a really good red team. Like our all of our red team, came from like the military and the NSA,
yeah.
because the director over the red team, he came from the military. So he was like, I'm only going to hire,
Clever
NSA
though.
people.
Yeah.
And they like started challenging, my side of security, the blue team.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that they would challenge them with is like, oh, I bet, we could like scan the badge, or, we'll stake out the place for weeks and security won't even know, right? Because security actually did like roaming patrols around the building. This is in the middle of, a big city, right, in America. And sure enough, one of these guys like basically didn't shower for like 2 or 3 weeks,
Amazing.
dressed up as a homeless person, sat outside the front door.
Yeah.
Roaming security didn't do anything to, get him to leave or anything. He scanned someone's bag, went into the
Amazing.
lobby, and then, went into the side door that like essentially we would take like vendors there if they weren't already like on our trusted list or something, but they wanted to do a presentation. We would take them, to this room that's like sequestered, on the lobby floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he goes in there, plugs in his Ethernet, and he immediately gets connection to the network. And like they had been, talking it up for weeks with us. And we're like, we literally have a solution that is looking at the Ethernet ports and shutting them down.
Yeah.
Like, what are you even going to do to
Do.
this?
Yeah.
And he got right in, and he just did something. He did like three things that we just never
Never.
expected
Yeah.
someone to do.
And but that's the problem with the defensive side. You've got to expect it all, and you can't possibly do that. It's the harder side. It's impossible actually. But one of the things like I said in the book, and I continue to say, is you have to be like on the defensive side. It would be great to think like an attacker, sure, obviously, but it's not always possible. And then on the attacking side, on the offensive side, you have to be like contrarian. It has to be counter culture. You can't buy into the if you're an internal red team, you kind of got to not like the company. Not really, not truly. You're doing it out of love. It's like being a strict parent sort of thing. You're not doing it to be a dick. You're doing it because you have to do that to be good, but it has to be counterculture focused. You can't care about what they care about. In fact, you've got to be against them most of the time. And it's a really interesting job that way. I really liked it because you'll talk to people within your organization and you kind of like them and you hear how they think and how they talk. And then you're like, I have to weaponize this. This is amazing. And not everybody has that in them, but then the people that don't, I don't even know if they should be on the defensive side. I think defensively, you have to have an us against them mentality for the objective, but not the outcome, right? The outcome is you want the organization to be more secure, but the objective, you can't be with everybody. You've got to be, I don't know another way to say this. I hope that you don't have to beep all my cussing out and that your audience isn't like
No, I don't beep
disgusted
anything.
about, okay, good. But you have to be a dickhead. Have to, on both sides, like you have to think differently than the rest of your organization, and you have to be willing to do things that everybody may not like. And obviously on the offensive side, that's fine. People expect that from you. On the defensive side, people are a little more, you're going to make me do what? If it's fishing exercises or whatever people are doing now, especially with AI, that's very interesting. I've not properly looked into how AI is helping or not hindering, I guess, security. I'm sure it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. No, you bring up a really good point, and I think a lot of people kind of miss this point, right? In security, you're not really supposed to be liked.
No,
No,
remove
if you're doing
yourself.
your job right,
Yeah,
a
you shouldn't
lot of
be.
people dislike you.
Yeah,
I mean, like when people would come up to me and ask me for different things, my initial response, like the first 5 times, is no.
no,
I'm
yeah,
like,
no,
no, get out of my face. I
yeah,
don't want to hear this.
you
That's the
have to.
worst idea I've heard.
Yeah.
Like
Are
you
you on
literally just made
something?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just made my
With my
board for the
plug.
day,
Yeah.
like, good job, you know?
Amazing.
Like, I
Yeah.
got on a call one time, I was working for a large German automotive manufacturer. I got on a call one time because I was deploying a WAF globally, and, uh, there was 150 developers on the call. Now, one, it was extremely difficult for me
Amazing.
to get 10 developers on the
Yeah.
call at one time, right?
Yeah.
For something that they, like, absolutely had to do. But for 150 of them to be on the call at the same time, that was weird. And I get on the call, and for an hour and a half, they're just, like, berating me, trying to trick me into
You're
agreeing
doing
to
your job.
essentially, like, bypass
Yeah.
the WAF completely, and they were using terms that I didn't quite know the definition of, like, they were trying to get me to do things that but they weren't trying to tell me what it was that they wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I after, like, literally 90 minutes of being on this call, I just reached out to my engineer who's also on the call. It's me and him and these other guys. And I reached out to him and was like, "Are they trying to get me to bypass the WAF?" He goes, "Yeah, I just
Yeah.
realized that too." And I, like, cut off the lead dev that was talking at the time. And I said, "I'm gonna tell you this right now. You are doing what I just told you to do. We're not bypassing anything. I'm not putting in another rule." And he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to the CISO then." I was like,
Good luck.
I'll schedule
Yeah.
the call for you. What the CISO isn't going to tell you anything
Uh,
different,
yeah.
And like sure enough, he like reached out to the CISO in the back end and was like, "Do I have to listen to Joe?" And the CISO was like, "You need to listen to Joe
Cinder
as if
Joe.
I'm the one telling you it."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like that's the kind of support that you need. But like
You do.
again, those devs hated me.
Yeah.
For like 2
Good
years they
job.
hated me.
Good job. Is it's like it's both fortunate and unfortunate because everything that we do in security matters, and yet nothing matters because you will be breached. It is possible, and we can't see it all, but good God, we're trying our best. If you listen, then we'll be a little bit safer and a little bit safer and a little bit safer. But of course, it's not foolproof. And then that it's one of the worst things about all humanity is it's sort of like this example which riles me. You hear it used to be smokers, maybe in the future it'll be vapors, I don't know. But you remember it used to be the people who were smoking, they would always say, well, Bob dropped dead of lung cancer and he didn't smoke. And you're like, okay, well that's one. But you've given yourself a 50% increase of all cause mortality by having your cigarette. But it's impossible once people get this one in their column, they're like, they overgeneralize it. So once you've been breached, but you put in all this effort not to be, then you have all these people go, well, it didn't work. And you're like, well, they tried all the other things and that's how they got in. And now we know, but it's a thankless task most of the time. It really is. It
Yeah.
really, really is. And then of course there are things that happen now where it's sort of conspiratorial. So what was it the Baltimore Bridge? I remember people thinking that was a cyber attack. The outages, the CrowdStrike one, people were so sure that was one, and it's one, new engineer that pressed the wrong button. The AWS one, I was at a conference, so I wasn't up to date on that, but I'm sure people were immediately like, it's the Chinese. I'm sure that they were. And so, yeah, we've got this conspiratorial, both internally and externally, this conspiratorial mindset where your organization is against the internal security and think we're out to get them, and they're also against being breached but won't always do what it takes. I sound a little bit cynical on people today, and I don't know that I always feel this way. It's just you've taken me back to what it's like to get people to do things within an organization, and it's so difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm very glad I'm not on that side of security
yeah,
anymore. It's the most frustrating thing
it is
possible.
thankless.
It's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, can I just get you to do your job?" Like,
Hmm.
it's just your job, what we pay you for, like,
Yeah.
but you bring up the mentality though
Mm.
of security overall, where the
Yeah.
attacker only has to be right once.
Once.
And the blue team, the other side, has to be right 100% of the time. And if you're right
Yes.
99.9% of the
Doesn't
time,
matter.
guess what? You still failed. You got breached. So like with that data center breach where you went through the sewer system,
Mm.
what was that experience like? Because I'm sure the experienced people on the team we're probably thinking immediately, one, this never should have been able to happen. Two, we're about to get in a lot of trouble. Three, we're
Yeah.
getting arrested.
Yeah.
It goes through
Yeah.
all of those things. Even though you have the proper documentation and everything else like that, you're still probably getting arrested and you have to
Yeah.
like talk your way out of it to some extent, right? What
Well,
was that like?
I think what's like people fail to realize about red teaming is more often than not, all you have is a piece of paper where you give it to whoever catches you and you say, this is, no, I'm supposed to be here. And they're like, oh, great, you've got letterhead. I do not believe you. Get on your knees. I'm going to, and we've already called the police. And you're like, no, fuck, call the person on the letter, but no one wants to call their boss and be like, there's a piece of paper here, but there's also someone who is, intruded and they also do not smell good. In two cases here, one, we've gone through the sewer and you're a guy who hadn't showered for 3 weeks. So they're just like, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And sometimes they will call and then the person on the other end of the line will be like, yeah, I'm on my way. I always prefer when it's someone local. If I'm caught, first of all, as an immigrant, I don't want to be arrested. Definitely don't want to be arrested today. I'd be straight to ICE pretending I've, come from Mauritius. But like send me back there. But you shouldn't joke about those things. But no, I always want that person to be local. And sometimes they would agree to be in the area too, which I think is quite helpful. And yeah, it's sort of the job is interesting, the job is fun. That is to me the most fun you can have is on the offensive side. You get to think differently. You get to do things that the general population A generally can't conceive of, and B, even if they could, generally wouldn't do it, right? The consequences are too steep. All of those hurdles, barriers are removed for us. We get to think up the worst things, the most intricate things, and then we get to execute on them. And there's really mainly no consequences. I think a few years ago, and I can't remember the names, so just generally, there was a team who were breaking into, I think, a government facility. They were caught and they were arrested, and I think they were prosecuted. And the whole industry was like, what the fuck is going on? And I was just getting in, I think, at that point, and I was like, is this a big deal, is it? And they were like, well, yeah, because then we can't do our job sort of thing if this is, do you want arrested? And I'm like, no. Um, but generally speaking, the consequences are also removed. And then you just have to report your findings step by step plus mitigations in a sort of empathetic, but also business centric way. I think that's like one of the best jobs in the world. So yeah, I enjoyed getting into those sewers and crawling through them. And there was like a galley. So for sewers, most sewers, there's sort of galley areas where for people who are going to inspect them or perform maintenance, they can enter and they're usually over 6 feet tall. And it just happened that this data center sort of connected with that, which you want to say it was an oversight, but was it? Because that data center was unbelievably secure. I could have set myself on fire. I don't think the guards would have come to help. Like they were very well trained. We tried everything. We tried every surface thing that we could. And the sewer thing was like a last ditch effort. We had to go to the city, to the municipality and get like, blueprints. And we were all like, oh, it's possible. But if it wasn't, I don't think that we would have gotten in. And so that's sort of interesting. It was, again, the more skill you have, the more luck is important. And that was luck. Like there was no skill involved in the sewer being there. It was just, all right, let's find the manholes or the entry points and see what happens here. We still, even once we figured out how close the galley area was, we still didn't know if we could get there undetected. So it was, yeah, it was a really interesting job. I really enjoyed it, even though I was not, it wasn't the most cleanliest of jobs, but it was interesting. I did enjoy that. I enjoyed getting in. It's funny when you walk into a room and you can feel there's been an argument or something. We all have that like sensor. And I remember standing in that data center with the team who were following us. They were internal again, and they didn't have anything to do, but they were just following us. And they were like, I just remember looking at them going, oh, this is really bad for them. This is really, really bad for them. And then I'm like, okay. Yeah, it was a really interesting job. I'm sort of glad it was my last one because it was a good one to go out on. It gave birth to the company that I run now, obviously. And yeah, it was a success, which is a good note to end your red teaming career on. But yeah, and if I could do more data centers, I probably would, because they're very interesting places.
So did the galley get you just onto the data center grounds, or did it get you like into the data center?
When all got us close enough to the data center, we still had to sort of go through another few barriers, but it was very close. It wasn't within the perimeter, but it was
Mhm.
close enough to the very, very edge of the perimeter that we knew sort of where to go next. And then the job became a little bit harder, but getting into the galley was the sort of celebration, or first step celebration. But yeah, and I don't know, I can't remember if we gave a heads up to the municipality. I'm sure we didn't. I'm sure that we did not.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to be using these. But yeah, it was because, so let's say we had to break into just the galley, and I can't imagine a job where that would be the sort of objective. But if that was the case, then we would have been dressed in totally different attire. Because one of the big things for red teaming and social engineering is what you're wearing. You know, social engineering especially, you can't turn up in all black for a day job. You better turn up looking like you're in office attire or whatever it is, high vis PPE and a clipboard sometimes. Actually, Oasis, one of my sort of favorite bands, and a lot of nostalgia around them, and they went on tour. And when the tickets first came out, they were going for like $10,000. And I was like, mother. And I looked to my partner, I was like, I'm going to need some high vis TV, a clipboard, and a set of ladders or something, because I'm going in the back of that arena. I'm not going to not go. So yeah, what you're wearing carries some sort of authority. But yeah, we would have been wearing something different if it was just in there, because what if someone was actually maintaining or inspecting the galley, and we go in and we're dressed in hazmat suits? They wouldn't have, would have been like, what are you guys doing here? And I would have had no good answer. I'm like, looking at stuff. So yeah, preparation also, preparation, how you're dressed, how you're going to get through all hurdles. I do everything in reverse on those sorts of jobs. So what I'm going to do when I get in there, I start there and then work backwards. I can't do it in like its linear form. Have to start at the end and work backwards and sort of zigzag. If this happens, I'll do that. If that happens, I'll do this. And no plan survives first contact with the enemy, but it's good to have planned. It's good to get your brain into that way of thinking, because you sort of loosen it up. It's like warming up. You loosen it up for anything could happen, and often does. Um, so yeah, security is fun. The actual like logical part of it is still fun, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. You're not
So
liked, but it's fun.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So you're doing subsea data centers now.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's unique risks with that. Like, how does that even work? Because you have to probably run cables all the way down to the bottom of the ocean, wherever the subsea data center is.
Yeah.
And they're probably at risk to some point or some extent of tapping the cables or
Yeah.
whatever it might be.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely sort of vulnerabilities. So we already have a lot of power cables subsea. Basically, you know, like 99% of all traffic over the internet is going through a cable, and most of that is going through subsea cables. Where are you based?
Chicago.
Chicago. Yeah, so ours probably isn't. I'm usually in California, but ours probably isn't. But a lot of traffic goes through subsea cables that are already there. And of course, those need power. Everything offshore assets need power. So there's a lot of power cables. There's also a lot of countries that export cable. France exports power through cable to like Denmark. So we tap into those power cables. And then of course the fiber optics are already there. So in terms of like the logistics and the operations, it's actually really easy. In terms of the vulnerabilities, we face the exact same ones that the cables themselves face. The good and the bad of it is, like, if it happens, it's a catastrophe. If a bad actor gets to us, that's not good, obviously. But it's a lot harder to do. You need a ship, you need divers or ROVs. It's expensive, far more expensive than on land. To do a red team on an offshore asset is very expensive. Now, of course, if you're a nation state actor, you're going to be well funded, going to be able to do it, but it's a little bit more traceable because, again, you probably need a ship now. Ships have like AIS, they're identifying tags, and they can be followed, but they can be turned off. So you can turn it off. So then we're relying on sensors of the cables, sensors in the units themselves that sort of let us know it, the unit's being raised and we did not authorize that. Like, what do we do? And then you become reliant on satellite. So it's more finicky in some ways, a lot harder to do for us in some ways, but it's a lot harder to do for an adversary. There's no just bad actor who's out there that's going to be able to do it. It's going to be a nation state. And if it's going to be a nation state, they'll do it on land or they'll do it subsea. They'll find a way to do that. So that in and of itself doesn't matter. We hope that it's a lot more difficult for them to do, but it's not possible. And if it can be done, it will be done. So we just have to find different ways to secure. And again, it's sensors, but it's also when we have 20 units, which roughly is about 40 megawatts of compute at a site, then we have a security vessel, security/maintenance vessel that stays on site. That doesn't mean that there aren't subs that couldn't be detected. But again, if they want to break in and destroy the units, they will be able to do that, but they'll be able to do the same on land. So
Hmm.
it's an interesting little dance that we're all in together, geopolitically speaking.
That's a really good point that you bring up that like if your data centers were to get breached, that's like
Yeah.
the least of the problems that would have occurred to enable that sort of attack,
Yeah.
which I didn't even think about it like that. So that makes a lot of sense to your end customer then. Are they, I mean, it's just probably just connecting over an IP because
Yeah.
you have network access, so
Yeah. Yeah.
you just have an IP,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it.
Huh.
Maintenance is similar also in that we load balance if a rack goes out, then a rack goes out. We'll bring it online someplace else. If an entire unit goes out and it's 2 or 3 megawatts, that's a different story. We might be able to sort of load balance that to some degree, or we might have to switch out the units. That's kind of it. We promise that within a 12-hour window. I guess the only thing that would elongate that would be severe weather, which you get in the North Sea and you get everywhere, but it's slightly different than on land because severe weather on land, that window might grow by 3 or 4 hours. For us, it might grow for, 8 hours or something like that. We need certain conditions before we can go out on deck. But if we're in a port or a river or a dam, then it's the exact same. We can probably get it done in less time. But further offshore, it's a little bit different.
So, would most of your customers then be like nation states? I mean, maybe not.
Nah.
What would you say makes up most of your customer base?
So military just now, and then we're starting to sort of get back into this commercial adoption curve. We were slow on that for a while. Most of our customers that way, we thought we're going to be the hyperscalers, but actually the hyperscalers don't sort of set trends. They adopt them once they've been figured out. So most of our customers are either SM or we're renting directly out to the market, sort of neo cloud structure. And then we have these sort of really tight partnerships with companies who either know about or heavily involved in the offshore industry already. So they're maybe platform owners, things like that. And what we do with them is we'll co-locate with them, or offshore wind we'll co-locate with, and then we go out together to the market and get generally private tenants just now, but or neo cloud, sort of just renting out to the market. And then now we're starting to see some of those big players who need to care about latency, maybe because they're streaming games or um, entertainment. Then we're starting to see them pop up now too. But the commercial adoption is coming, but it's not quite there yet. We're not a well-known enough entity. We're starting to get there, but we're still esoteric. But I guess when it really started to change was with I don't know if you would call the advent of AI, but definitely the advent of commercial AI relative to the public. Then people were starting to think like, oh wait, we actually need much higher rack densities. Who does that? And at the time it was only us. And so we saw a lot of uptake there as well. So I think as we move away from if we move away from training and we move into inference, which requires edge, then we'll probably grow and grow. And I expect to see that over the next sort of 8 to 10 months is a lot of AI adoption.
That's interesting. Like the companies that are really paying attention to
Yeah.
latency for their product.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get any closer
No,
than that, you know?
no. And like 55% of the world's population lives coastally. And then a sort of large amount of the remaining also live close to water. Like that's how we set up our societies, right? And so, yeah, you can't get closer. Some of the latency metrics that we have are like a 98% decrease in latency, which is wild.
That's insane.
But it doesn't matter for everyone. And that's kind of not the problem, but that's this slow adoption because it matters to maybe some fintech and it matters to telehealth, but we're not doing that holistically in society just now. So it matters like to just these little niches. And then, of course, everyone cares about their Netflix. No one wants a buffering time. And it also matters to like gaming, but yeah, we're still niche, but we're growing. We can see what it probably like. We can see around a few corners, or we've got like a long enough line of sight. But after about, I guess, call it 18 months from now, we're blind and we're guessing, just like every other company. Because it all depends on AI. And AI just now is a bubble. How big's the bubble? I don't know. I don't know if anyone knows. I think to be a really sort of big bubble that is felt either nationally or internationally, the sort of bubble size in terms of GDP has to be over 6%, I think, as a rule of thumb. And right now, AI is about, I think, 3 or 4% of GDP. So we're not there on a huge bubble, but we might get there. Alternatively, it might be that the hyperscalers, NVIDIA and OpenAI are the most injured parties if this is a bubble and it bursts. And the rest of us can go, okay, well, we'll go back to Google search. Like, let's see what happens.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was I mean, I know we're coming up on time here, but I was watching a video earlier that said that Nvidia's market cap is now bigger than Germany's entire
Yeah.
economy.
Yeah. It's
M-
wild.
my only comment was Nvidia is now too big to fail. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
basically is. You
You're
see that
right.
kind of market cap evaporate, on the
Yes.
S&P 500. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
30% decline basically.
Yeah. That would put people in a bad mood. Yeah. Exactly. It's interesting to think of it that way, but it is circular. If you kind of look at the money,
It's so circular.
it's so circular
It's like
that
it's like,
basically
guys, you can't think that this is a
this is
good idea. I mean,
sustainable.
you have to be like 10 times smarter than me. Well, how am I
100
pointing
times
out that
smarter
this
than
is a
me.
terrible, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, come on.
No, it is. It's sort of wild that, and it's sort of, I don't know, reductively, there's more nuance to it than kind of how I'm gonna bastardize this, but ultimately we need to know, or we need to see OpenAI succeed because the hyperscalers are currently paying for their GPUs because they're putting money into NVIDIA. NVIDIA is giving it to OpenAI in the form of GPUs and sort of their other, I don't know if they're SPE structures, but some structure. And if OpenAI fail, what's going to happen, sort of thing. So it's sort of interesting that way. But yeah, the hyperscalers are currently paying for OpenAI's trajectory, I suppose. So if they fail, then what happens? And if they don't fail, then great, it does get paid off. But let's see. Let's see. Because again, like user behavior hasn't changed significantly. Like AI is still very visible at the moment, and it's changed in how we get some outcomes, but it's not really changed the outcomes themselves. I need information. Well, I search it, and now I get it in a bar at the top of the screen. It didn't change anything for me, right? I would have gotten that information anyway. It changed how I interact with customer support, but I was going to get the customer support anyway. And the promise of AI was it will do things both better than us, which I think that in some cases it does, but it will also do things differently. It's not doing things different. Like we are not changing rules because of AI just now. And my favorite sort of way to think about this is stop signs. I want to get into a Waymo and never stop. I don't have to stop until I've reached my destination because it knows where every other car is. I don't need a stop sign anymore. I don't even need to stay on the same like of the road anymore. I can go around obstacles because it knows where every other car is. It gets me there safely, far more safely than my Uber driver, um, from multiple levels. But it's not changed that yet. It's just changed the speed and the safety. But ultimately, I get there the exact same way as if someone was driving it. So until it changes outcomes, it's going to be very sort of interesting to in how we think of it. Like, I think people are still trying to make it a feature just now, but to be a winner in AI, it's going to have to be more than a feature. It has to be a different part of the stack, and you have to be involved in all of the stack from the infrastructure all the way through to the product. And again, I don't know if this is maybe the right note to finish on, but there's no moat around LLMs just now. You pop the same query in to name your top five: Rock, ChatGPT, can't think, Gemini, you know, Perplexity. Same. I don't know. You read an answer to me, probably can't guess who gave you the answer. So where's the differentiation? Now we're working on preference. It's sort of interesting that way.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's a really good point. It'll be interesting to see how everything,
shakes
kind of
out.
shakes out.
Yeah, I know. I know. Well,
Yeah.
that was that. On that note,
Right.
yeah,
Well, Maxie, I really do appreciate you coming on. I think it was a great conversation.
yeah,
I definitely really enjoyed it.
me too.
But yeah, thank you so much for finally being able to come
Yeah,
on.
thank you for your patience and for keeping on trying because I am sorry. But yeah. But yeah, no, it was really good, really enjoyable. Let's see in a year's time what's happening with AI and we can discuss that. And I can tell you if I got abuse for the things I said about both parents and people in security.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do it again for sure.
Perfect.
Yeah, Maxie, before I let you go, how about you tell my audience where they can connect with you if they wanted to connect with you, and
Yeah.
where they could find Subsea Cloud if they wanted to learn
Yeah.
more?
So I'm most active on LinkedIn. I know I slighted it earlier by calling it professional social media, but I am most active on there somewhat. Like, I browse X every now and again, but I'm trying to post there more often. We'll see. And I am just about to start like a essentially an AI security blog, which makes me sound like a boomer, but also like a newsletter that will go out just hitting the high points and then some, like hopefully what will be perceived as thoughtful analysis on AI and AI security every week. So you can find that probably maxiereynolds.com. Then yeah, LinkedIn. Not for you. You go to spam, but for everyone else, they can get in touch with me there.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks everyone. I hope you
Thank you.
enjoyed this episode. Cool.